This is who I am. My life began on October 24th, 1981 in Cleveland, Ohio. I was born Thomas Dale Rankins Jr. to Lisa Adams and Thomas Rankins Sr. I'm the second oldest of 9 children that includes 6 sisters and 2 brothers. The desire to excel has always been a part of my makeup, but to tell you who I am, I must start by telling you who I was. Before I do though, I want you to understand that there are many other good and bad things that went on in my life, and this is just a synopsis or an outline of the events I believe had an impact on the man I am today. My parents always seemed to be proud of me, and I recall always getting academic achievement awards from school. Around 1987, at the age of 6, there were a few changes that would go on to shape the next few years of my life. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but to say the least, my mother and father divorced, and that I believe affected them and us all differently. I don't remember my mother drinking much before then, but that's when I started noticing shortly after that it was more frequent than usual. My father, on the other hand, became subject to a drug addiction that followed him throughout my adolescence and early to mid-adult years. I'm sure their stories are different, and these may not be the only reasons they resorted to certain decisions, but it was what I understood as a growing young man. In 1991, around the age of 10, I started to really dig hip-hop. I would beat on the lunch tables and rap like my favorite artists and started to get some recognition from my peers. I think that's when I really started being concerned with my image. With my father not around and not many male role models to look up to, I took hold to the guys I seen on stage, in movies, or in a neighborhood that seemed cool. Around age 11, I was introduced to drugs, guns, sex, and unfortunately the police. Those things were very appealing and actually became the routine for me at that time. I remember us being devastated by my grandmother passing away and us taking over her home in a surrounding suburb. They say that God works in mysterious ways, and he surely was at work here, taking us out of the hood. However, we hadn't yet gotten the hood out of ourselves. As I said earlier, I always had a desire to excel, but that wasn't easy where I was from, so at age 14, I worked 4 jobs. I mowed lawns for Smythe Kramer Realty, delivered papers for the Sun Press, bussed tables at Aladdin's Eatery, and sold drugs at school. With 7 children, though my mother worked hard and tried her best, we didn't have the glamorous things you see on TV shows like My Sweet 16. Besides, I was a go-getter. At age 15, I purchased my first car. It was a Honda Prelude. Not exactly a Beamer, but I was rolling and my peers looked up to me. I formed my first rap group and got to the studio in 1998 when I was 17. Our group was known as the Survivors, and I went by the name of Machete because people always said I cut up the track. I always believed in hustling smart, so I kept a job while I was involved in other not-so-legal activities. I got my first $20,000 to $25,000 in about 2 months, and it was a crazy feeling to hold all of that money at one time. My mother didn't know everything that I was doing because I was still receiving awards and recognition from school about my grades. On the contrary though, I was being brought home from the police often, in and out of juvenile court, and being picked up from the local precincts almost regularly. I remember her crying about the things she knew of, and though it hurt my heart to see what I was putting her through, I couldn't bring myself to stop. Being a rebellious teen, I was sick of being told what I could and could not do, so as soon as I was old enough to, I got my own spot in 1999 when I turned 18. I still managed to graduate on time with honors and certification from the Business Professionals of America in 2000. With all of that intelligence people told me I had, I still found myself in the street life cycle. I kept a pistol on me at all times for various reasons and housed at least 5 to 6 guns of all types in my closet where I was living at now. There were other factors, but I think it started off with trying to uphold that image. I had money, cars, women, and was gaining much respect in the streets for my skills on the mic. On September 11, 2002, I was riding with the guy I ran with and was charged with carrying a concealed weapon after being pulled over at gunpoint by cops. Being that I was now an adult, I had some serious decisions to make about my life. On top of this new case, the female I was with then told me that she was pregnant, and I had also received a phone call from someone saying that I may be also looking at federal charges for something else I was involved in. I didn't want to be a father that had no part in my child's life, so this is really when I started to ask myself, what are you doing? Even though I didn't really care to know him then, it must have been God, because my felony charges were reduced and I was placed on probation. Nevertheless, I was now broke because on top of spending all the money on the lawyer and making a bad investment, I halted all business and laid low in the house for a couple of months when I found out about the possible charges I mentioned earlier. With no more money, I had no more friends, and all of the chaos brought me an uncomfortable and unsafe feeling where I was staying, so I relocated. On March 14, 2004, my first child was born. My baby boy, Tamaris Dale Rankins, was the start of a new beginning for me. Though I toned down a bit, I was still running reckless for a while until I was invited to a church by one of my best friends. If it were anybody else, I'm sure I wouldn't have been persuaded to attend, but I knew he must have experienced something if he decided to change. Shortly after, on December 12th, I made a decision to be reborn and was baptized. That's when the real transformation set forth. Everything didn't happen immediately, but I found myself wanting more in life and not being pleased by all of the things that pleasured me, though it was still tempting. I still found it difficult to find a job because of my record, and I couldn't enroll in school either for the same reason. I really wanted to do the right thing by God, but the next 2 years were extremely challenging with this new mind. That same year, 2004, I met my soulmate, Randy Poteet, and we became one on May 13, 2006. She had a son, Jameer, so now I had 2 boys. Our wedding was beautiful, but very eventful, to say the least. In short, my brother, who was the best man, passed out during our vows. I vomited on my wife and mother-in-law while lighting a unity candle. My wife's veil caught on fire trying to catch me. My sister got into a car accident, 2 bridesmaids were faint, and a limousine didn't show up. It may sound scripted, but the day after we were married, I received a phone call saying that my record would be expunged. This meant I can get a job and go to school as well. On March 24th, 2007, my wife and I had our first child together, Braylon Thomas Rankins. God was at work in my life. With things going somewhat well, I found myself in one of the most difficult times of my life ever in 2007. My wife's mother passed, my grandfather passed, my mother had a heart attack, I was struggling in class, and my wife lost her job from all of the time off, with the baby, burials, and grief. The day after she was fired, we got the keys to our brand new home, and it was broken into the same week with over $9,000 worth of damage. Shortly after, our family van was stolen from in front of our church, and if all of that wasn't enough, we received news that we were having our first baby girl and that she was having difficulties and would need major surgery as soon as she was born. Brielle Rankins was given birth on June 8, 2008, and just as the doctor stated, was immediately rushed into the operating room at a separate hospital. After 3 major surgeries and 7 months in intensive care and rehab, Brielle came home in January of 2009. Though those 2 years were tough, I completed my certification at school and became a paramedic, and my wife and I continued in our ministries when we weren't at the hospital. My wife had written and released her first book, and I released my first album. Since that time, I have released 2 additional albums, and my wife has released 2 additional books, one of which includes the Test and Testimony in full of Brielle. We have traveled the country and have been broadcasted throughout the world to over 170 nations. Brielle made her television debut on a show that Brandy and I appeared on previously. My music has been featured on multiple television networks including Showtime, BET, TCT, TBN, JCTV, and more. We've even had the opportunity to appear on the legendary show Family Feud alongside Steve Harvey.
Guys, here we go. We got the top 6 answers on the board. Name someone you might frighten away if you answered your front door naked. Thomas.
Postman.
The postman. You already talking about it. Name the worst place to find a toenail clipper.
Steve, I don't think you will have this problem, but we're gonna say your hair.
Hey, Thomas. Just give your answers. Don't include me in your answers. Your hair.
My mother always lets me know how proud she is of who I've become, and I'm also in the process of rebuilding a relationship with my father. By 2016, I plan on having my wife's business, Speak Life Ministries, and my label, Truth Music Records / Ministries, up and running full-time, impacting lives and making a real change in the world. Who am I? I'm a mighty man of God, a husband, a father, an overcomer, an artist, a businessman, a brother, a son, a friend. I am more than a conqueror, and so are you. This is who I am.
Walk it out now, feet to your dream. On the right course, don't forget your sword. His words you heard is faith to move forward. Life's no course where we learn success. Pass this test, your advance is next. Somebody might cry, I failed last time. Used to be the man, I could touch the sky. Lost everything, now your well is dry. Go beyond that, increase your faith. Trust the one God to bring it all back. Leave that place, forget your past. Stay occupied with greater in mind. Press toward the mark, press toward the prize. That's the high call of God in Christ. When hard times arise, you need to retreat. Philippians 4:12-13.
Cause the sky's the limit. 100 miles in a minute. You surprised that I did it? I can do all things, living out all dreams. See with your mind and let it be what it all seems. Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. Nah, we can do it.